The Missouri settlement had no name for what covered Eliza Crane's face. A deep red stain spread from her left temple to her jaw, like a map of some foreign country no one wanted to visit. She had worn a veil for 25 years, hiding the mark that made children cry and mothers cross themselves. The dying rancher's name was Thomas Wade. He had a fever that would not break, a cough that rattled his bones, and a doctor who had given him 2 weeks to live. His brother, cruel and practical, placed an advertisement for a wife. Any woman desperate enough to marry a corpse. The matchmaker saw an opportunity to be rid of Eliza. She told the brother about the cursed woman, and the brother laughed. A dying man and a disfigured woman. It was the funniest thing he had heard in years. He paid the fare. Eliza boarded the train without a veil. She had decided to stop hiding. The other passengers stared, whispered, moved to different seats. She sat alone, her chin high, her hands folded in her lap, and watched the world pass by outside the window. Thomas's brother met her at the station in Cheyenne. He took one look at her face and laughed out loud, then told her his brother was too sick to care what she looked like. He loaded her onto a wagon like cargo and drove her to the ranch. The ranch house was dark and smelled of sickness. Eliza stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light, and saw a man lying in a bed by the cold fireplace. He was pale, thin, his breath shallow. His eyes were closed, and she thought for a moment that she had arrived too late. She knelt beside the bed and touched his forehead. His skin burned beneath her fingers. She did not flinch. She had been touched by cruelty her whole life. Fever was nothing compared to that. She began to bathe his face with cool water. Thomas opened his eyes. He looked up at the woman leaning over him, at the red mark covering half her face, and he did not stare. He did not look away. He whispered, "Thank you," and closed his eyes again. Eliza stayed by his bedside for 3 days and 3 nights. She brewed teas from wild herbs she found in the woods. She changed his linens. She spoke to him in a low, steady voice, telling him stories about her childhood, about the garden she had once grown, about the birds she could name. On the 4th morning, Thomas's fever broke. He opened his eyes and saw her asleep in the chair beside his bed, her head tilted back, the red mark on her face catching the pale dawn light. He watched her for a long time, and when she woke, he smiled. The doctor rode out from town, expecting to perform a burial. He found Thomas sitting up in bed, eating broth, asking for his boots. The doctor examined him, shook his head in disbelief, and asked what had changed. Thomas pointed at Eliza. The doctor looked at her face, at the birthmark, and stepped back. He muttered something about witchcraft and rode away quickly. Within a week, the settlement had a new word for Eliza, witch. Within a month, they had a new word, healer. Thomas watched the townsfolk come to his door first in fear, then in desperation. A child with a broken arm, a woman with a rattling cough, a man with a wound that would not heal. Eliza touched each one, and each one improved. She did not know why. She only knew she could not refuse. Thomas asked her one evening, as they sat on the porch, if she knew she was saving lives. She touched her own cheek, the red mark warm beneath her fingers, and said she had spent her whole life being told she was poison. She had not expected to be medicine. Thomas took her hand and told her that the mark was not a curse. It was a sign that she was different, and different was exactly what this world needed. He told her he had been dying not of fever but of loneliness, and she had cured that too. Eliza wept, the first tears she had shed in years, and Thomas held her. He held her until the stars came out, and then he held her longer. The woman with the cursed face had found a man who saw past it. The dying rancher had found a reason to live. They married in the meadow behind the ranch, with wildflowers at their feet and the mountains standing witness. Eliza wore no veil. The minister hesitated when he saw her face, but Thomas took his hand and said, "She is beautiful. Marry us." The settlement stopped calling her witch, and started calling her healer. Her reputation spread across the territory, and people came from hundreds of miles away to be touched by her hands. She never charged a penny. She never turned anyone away. Thomas built her a clinic beside the ranch house, with a big window facing east so the morning light would fill the room. He hung a sign above the door: Eliza Wade, healer. No one turned away. He painted it himself, his hands clumsy but his heart sure. Years passed, and the red mark on Eliza's face faded somewhat, though never entirely. She stopped noticing it. Thomas stopped seeing it. The children who came to her clinic touched her cheek with curious fingers, and she let them, and they learned that different was not scary. A final wide shot of the ranch at golden hour, Eliza and Thomas, old and gray, sitting on the porch of the clinic they built together. Her hand rests on his knee, his arm wraps around her shoulders, and the red mark on her face catches the sunset like a blessing. Behind them, the mountains rise purple and gold, and a line of people waits patiently at the clinic door. The woman they called Cursed became the woman who healed them all, and the dying rancher lived to be the oldest man in the territory.